In the bustling city of Milan in 1485, where the Sforza castle stood as a symbol of power and ambition, a man of quiet genius worked in a workshop filled with the scent of oil and the clatter of metal. That man was Leonardo da Vinci, a 33-year-old artist and inventor who had come to Milan 3 years earlier to serve Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan. The Duke, known as Il Moro for his dark complexion, was a man of grand visions, eager to strengthen his military might against rival city-states like Venice and Florence. Leonardo, with his boundless imagination, had been tasked with designing war machines to give Milan an edge, a challenge that both excited and daunted him. Leonardo's workshop was a marvel of creativity, its stone walls lined with sketches of fantastical devices, armored vehicles, flying machines, and a multi-barreled cannon that could fire several shots in rapid succession. Dressed in a simple tunic, his hands stained with ink and grease, Leonardo stood over a wooden table, adjusting a small model of his latest invention, a cannon with 8 barrels arranged in a fan-like pattern, designed to unleash a barrage of projectiles with devastating speed. His long hair was tied back, his face etched with concentration as he muttered calculations under his breath, his mind racing with possibilities. The Duke had given him a month to present a working prototype, and the deadline loomed like a storm on the horizon. Outside the workshop, the city buzzed with the preparations for war. Soldiers marched through the streets, their armor clanking, while messengers rode in and out of the castle, carrying news of Venetian movements. Among the Duke's military advisors was General Marco Ferraro, a grizzled veteran of countless battles, his face scarred from years of combat, his broad shoulders draped in a crimson cloak adorned with the Sforza crest. Marco was a man of action, not ideas, and he had little patience for the Duke's new favorite, a painter who claimed he could build machines of war. When Marco heard of Leonardo's latest project, he scoffed, his deep voice carrying through the castle halls. "A painter playing at war?" he had said to his men. "This Leonardo will bring us nothing but embarrassment." One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow over Milan, Marco strode into Leonardo's workshop unannounced, his heavy boots echoing on the stone floor. A small group of soldiers followed, their expressions a mix of curiosity and amusement. Leonardo looked up from his model, his dark eyes meeting Marco's with a calm that seemed to irritate the general even more. "So, this is the great war machine I've heard so much about?" Marco said, his voice dripping with sarcasm as he gestured to the wooden model on the table. "A toy for children, not a weapon for men. The Duke must be mad to trust a dreamer like you with Milan's defense." Leonardo set down his tools, his movements deliberate, his expression unruffled. "This toy, as you call it, could change the course of a battle," he replied, his voice steady. "It fires 8 shots in the time it takes a single cannon to fire one. Imagine the chaos it could unleash on an enemy line." Marco threw his head back and laughed, the sound harsh and grating as his soldiers joined in. "Chaos? The only chaos will be your humiliation when this contraption fails," he sneered. "I've seen enough of your scribbles, Leonardo. Prove it works, or I'll have you thrown out of Milan myself." The soldiers murmured in agreement, but Leonardo's gaze remained steady, a quiet fire burning in his eyes. "Very well," he said, his tone as calm as a still lake. "In 3 days, on the fields outside the castle, I will demonstrate the machine for the Duke, and for you. But be prepared, General, to witness something you cannot imagine." Marco's smirk faltered for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing his scarred face, but he quickly masked it with a dismissive wave. "3 days, then," he said, turning to leave. "I'll enjoy watching you fail, painter." As the general and his men departed, their laughter echoing down the alley, Leonardo returned to his work, his mind already racing with plans for the demonstration that would silence his doubters. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity, as Leonardo and his small team of assistants worked tirelessly to prepare the full-scale prototype of the multi-barreled cannon. The workshop buzzed with the sound of hammering and sawing as wooden beams were shaped and metal barrels forged in the castle's armory. Leonardo barely slept, His hands moving with a precision that belied the exhaustion in his eyes, his mind focused on every detail: the alignment of the barrels, the mechanism for rapid firing, the stability of the frame. His assistants, a group of young apprentices who had followed him from Florence, watched in awe as their master brought his vision to life, but they couldn't help but worry. "What if it fails, master?" One of them, a boy named Luca, asked nervously. Leonardo smiled, placing a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "Failure is only a step toward success, Luca," he said, "but this will not fail." On the morning of the demonstration, the fields outside the Sforza castle were transformed into a makeshift testing ground. A wooden platform had been erected for the Duke and his court, its surface draped in crimson banners bearing the Sforza crest, while a crowd of soldiers, nobles, and curious onlookers gathered on the grassy expanse. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue dotted with wispy clouds, and the mood was one of eager anticipation. At the center of the field stood Leonardo's cannon, its 8 barrels gleaming in the sunlight, its wooden frame reinforced with iron bands. Leonardo stood beside it, his simple tunic dusted with sawdust, his face calm but focused as he made final adjustments, his hands moving with the precision of a surgeon. Not far away, General Marco Ferraro arrived with his retinue, his crimson cloak billowing in the breeze, his scarred face set in a sneer. He carried a longsword at his side, its hilt encrusted with rubies, a symbol of his status as one of Milan's most feared commanders. "So, this is your great invention?" Marco called out, his voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. "It looks like a child's toy, not a weapon of war. You'll be the laughingstock of Milan by sundown, Leonardo." The soldiers around him chuckled, their hands resting on the hilts of their swords while some in the crowd whispered doubts. A noblewoman in a green gown turned to her companion, murmuring, "The Duke places too much faith in this artist," while a young soldier nearby shrugged, "If it works, I'll eat my helmet." Leonardo ignored the taunts, his focus on the cannon as he loaded it with small iron balls, each one carefully weighed for balance. The Duke, Ludovico Sforza, arrived moments later, his presence commanding silence from the crowd. Dressed in a black doublet embroidered with gold, his dark eyes sharp and calculating, Ludovico took his seat on the platform, his advisors flanking him. "Leonardo," he said, his voice deep and authoritative, "you have promised me a weapon that will strike fear into our enemies. Show me it is worth my trust." Leonardo bowed his head, his expression serene. "It will be as you command, my lord," he replied, his voice steady. "But I ask that General Ferraro join me on the field, to witness the demonstration up close." The crowd gasped, and Marco's smirk faded, replaced by a scowl. "You dare to challenge me, painter?" he growled, but the Duke raised a hand, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Indulge him, Marco," Ludovico said. "If Leonardo fails, you'll have your victory. If he succeeds, you'll have a lesson." Marco hesitated, then strode onto the field, his soldiers following at a distance, their faces a mix of amusement and unease. Leonardo gestured to a row of wooden targets set up 50 yards away, each one painted with a red bullseye. "General," he said, his tone calm but firm, "stand behind the cannon, and you'll see what it can do." The crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on the field as Leonardo prepared the cannon for its first test. Marco stood a few paces behind the machine, his arms crossed, his expression one of smug confidence. "Go on, then," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Show us your little toy, Leonardo. I'll enjoy watching it fall apart." The soldiers chuckled, but their laughter died as Leonardo lit the fuse, his movements swift and precise. A moment later, the cannon roared to life, its 8 barrels firing in rapid succession, each shot a thunderous boom that echoed across the field. The iron balls flew with terrifying speed, striking the wooden targets with devastating force, splintering them into pieces as the crowd gasped in unison. Dust and smoke filled the air, the acrid scent of gunpowder mingling with the fresh morning breeze, as the cannon's barrage continued for several seconds, each shot finding its mark with deadly accuracy. When the firing finally stopped, the targets were reduced to rubble, their red bullseyes obliterated, and the field was littered with shards of wood. The crowd erupted into cheers, their voices a cacophony of awe and disbelief, while the Duke leaned forward in his seat, his dark eyes gleaming with interest. "Magnificent," Ludovico murmured, his advisors nodding in agreement, their skepticism replaced by admiration. But the true shock came when the smoke cleared, revealing General Marco Ferraro on his knees, his crimson cloak torn, his face pale with terror. One of the iron balls had ricocheted off a target and landed just inches from his feet, leaving a small crater in the earth. The general's sword lay discarded in the grass, his hands trembling as he looked up at Leonardo, his bravado shattered. "Mercy!" he cried, his voice hoarse with fear. I I was wrong. This machine, it's a monster. Spare me, Leonardo. I beg you." The crowd fell silent, their cheers replaced by whispers of shock, as they watched the once proud general grovel before the artist he had mocked. Leonardo stepped forward, his expression calm but firm, as he extended a hand to help Marco to his feet. "This machine is not a monster," he said, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "It is a tool that can protect Milan if used with wisdom. But wisdom begins with humility, General. You saw only a painter, not the vision behind the work." Marco took Leonardo's hand, his scarred face flushed with shame, as he rose unsteadily to his feet. The crowd watched in stunned silence, their respect for Leonardo growing with every word, while the Duke stood, his applause breaking the tension. "Leonardo da Vinci," Ludovico declared, his voice ringing out across the field. "You have proven your worth. This machine will be the pride of Milan's arsenal, and you shall have all the resources you need to build more." The crowd erupted into cheers once more, their voices a chorus of praise as Leonardo bowed his head in gratitude, his assistants rushing to his side with wide smiles. Marco, still shaken, turned to Leonardo, his voice barely above a whisper. I underestimated you," he said. "I won't make that mistake again." Part 4. The Lesson of Vision, 1415 to 1900. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the crowd began to disperse, their voices filled with excitement as they recounted the demonstration to one another. Soldiers gathered around the cannon, marveling at its design, while nobles approached Leonardo with offers of patronage, their skepticism replaced by admiration. The Duke and his court returned to the castle, their minds already racing with plans to deploy Leonardo's invention against their enemies, while the field was left littered with the remnants of the shattered targets, a testament to the power of the multi-barreled cannon. Leonardo remained on the field, overseeing the dismantling of the cannon with his assistants, his hands moving with the same precision he had shown during the demonstration. General Marco Ferraro lingered nearby, his crimson cloak now stained with dirt, his scarred face etched with a mix of shame and respect. After a long moment, he approached Leonardo, his steps hesitant, his once proud demeanor humbled by the events of the day. "Leonardo," he said, his voice low, "I owe you an apology. I called you a dreamer, a painter playing at war, but you've shown me what true innovation looks like. I was wrong to doubt you." Leonardo paused, setting down a wrench and turned to face the general, his dark eyes filled with understanding. "Doubt is a natural thing, Marco," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "But it becomes dangerous when it blinds us to what is possible. This cannon is not just a weapon, it is a vision of what we can achieve when we dare to think beyond what we know. Strength is not just in the sword, but in the mind that wields it." Marco nodded slowly, the weight of Leonardo's words sinking deep into his heart. He thought of the countless battles he had fought, the lives lost to brute force, and for the first time, he saw the value of a different kind of strength, one born of creativity and foresight. "I've spent my life fighting with steel," Marco admitted, his voice heavy with reflection. "But you've shown me there's another way. Can I learn from you?" Not just about machines, but about this vision you speak of? Leonardo smiled, a warmth in his expression that seemed to light up the field. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a small sketchbook, handing it to Marco with a nod. Start with this, he said. Draw what you see, what you imagine. The battlefield is not just a place of war, it is a canvas for ideas. Let's create something better together. Marco took the sketchbook, his hands steady now, his eyes shining with a new purpose. He bowed his head in gratitude, a gesture of respect he had never offered anyone before, and turned to leave, his crimson cloak trailing behind him. As he walked away, the weight of his past doubts seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet determination to see the world through Leonardo's eyes. Leonardo watched him go, then returned to his work, his thoughts already drifting to the next invention, the next challenge, the next dream to bring to life. Leonardo's multi-barreled cannon would go on to inspire future generations of engineers, its design a testament to his visionary mind, even if it was never fully realized in his lifetime. But on that day in Milan, it had done something even greater. It had humbled a man who thought he knew everything, and in doing so had shown the world that true power lies not in force, but in the courage to imagine. So, the next time you doubt someone's vision, remember Leonardo's lesson. The greatest battles are won not with steel, but with ideas that change the world. If this story inspired you, we have many more tales of Leonardo's brilliance and ingenuity waiting for you. Click the screen to explore and subscribe for daily stories that remind us of the power of creativity to shape history.